What's going on? What's going on, y'all? It's your boys, Tag Team Champions of Interactive Sports Talk, Play Callers. So, of course, I'm Stephen Box, joined as always by my co host.
It's your boy Cool McCain.
So, cool, man. Got a lot to talk about tonight. It's going to be a little bit football centric tonight, obviously, with the NFL playoffs going on. Got some coaching stuff to talk about as well, and you know, wrapping up the NFL season here pretty soon. So,
Yes, sir.
got a couple other things we might throw in tonight as well. And of course, as always, if you're tuning in live with us, you can be interactive. And we love to talk about, different things. So, throw whatever you want in the chat. Be happy to chat about it. If you're listening to this on a podcast and you want to join us live, you can do that every Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. playcolorsportstalk.com/live. So let's you know what, man, we don't do a whole lot of review stuff, but I think we should maybe talk just a little bit about last week's games. So what was your thoughts on the first round of the NFL playoffs?
Well, before we talk about last week's games, we got to remind everyone that we are the universal, global, transcontinental, galaxial, and all those good terminologies tag team champs of Interactive Sports Talk. Now, it's more difficult to be the tag team champs of Interactive Sports Talk if we're not interacting, but we still manage to find a way to do it because we are who we are.
Sure.
But as far as last week goes, man, last week was very interesting, I thought. I think the teams that I anticipated winning won, but the thing is the way they won. I anticipated a lot of blowouts in the wild card round, and truthfully, there was only one real
Yep.
blowout.
Right.
So that was very interesting. And even in that game, and that of course is your 49ers game from last week, even though they did win the game, and it was convincing, not trying to take anything away from that, but Seattle hung in there for the majority of the first half, right? In the second half, you guys kind of came out and you know instilled your will onto the game.
Yeah.
So you had that happen in the second half. So I don't know if you want to just take it game by game or you want me to just run through what I think about all of them. Either way you want to rock it, I can do it.
Yeah, I mean, just your general thoughts. I mean, if you want to kind of go in depth on any particular game, that's cool. But I figure we just kind of do a quick overview of what our thoughts were on it.
So I have to talk about the Jags and the Chargers game. Trevor Lawrence had a putrid, disgusting first half. One very unbecoming of a quarterback that's as talented as he is. But just as horrible as he was in the first half, and as good as the Chargers were, everything flipped to the second half,
Hmm.
and the Chargers ended up losing that game.
Yeah, 27-0,
And then you lose.
and you lose. What they score, like 3 points only in the second half, right?
Did they even score three?
I think they got three in the second half. I'd have to go back and look at the final, but I think it was like a field goal is all they got.
I'll double check. I was actually looking at that. So I thought they lost 27-30 if I was correct, but no, you're right, 30-31. So they did get a field goal in the second half. But to be up 27-0 and then lose the game, I mean, it's pretty embarrassing, man. But at the same time, it's who the Chargers have shown that they are, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And then the other part of that is, if we're being 100% honest, Brandon Staley deserved to at least be in consideration to not have his job any longer. And the fact that he does is a joke.
Yeah. And they obviously went out, and I know they fired their defensive coordinator. Uh, but honestly, man, that is just it was an easy out, right? Like, oh, we're just gonna fire the defensive coordinator, and it's like, yeah, that's not it's not really just on the defensive coordinator though, right? Because we were talking about Brandon Staley getting fired like halfway through the season. So
Hmm.
So to me, the fact that you actually kept him and you like kind of went this route of getting rid of some of your assistants, yeah,
Yeah.
that was a mistake.
Yeah, that was a little crazy. Obviously, the Bills and Dolphins game much closer than it needed to be. The Bills should have been able to go out and dominate that game, but they weren't. And when you see this from these guys, you always think to yourself, if that's the case, then what could happen in the next round, right?
Mhm.
And of course, Giants and Vikings. Vikings are who we thought they were. You know, they did what we thought they were going to do. As
Yeah.
simple as that. Bengals, Ravens. You look at that one, man. The Bengals did everything to lose their game until that turnover at the end of the game. That was the only difference. If the turnover not happened, the Bengals do not win that game, I believe.
Yep.
And that's without Lamar Jackson playing the quarterback. So that tells you the Bengals and the Bills, that matchup, really looking at it and you're saying, these are two teams that really struggled last week. And the Bengals had more linemen get hurt. And we know the
Mhm.
talk all season has been about how Joe Burrow is not protected. Since he's been in Cincinnati, he hasn't been protected.
Yeah.
So this is just another, continuation of that. So that's a big concern for the Bengals going forward. Josh Allen is not playing like Josh Allen. That's a big concern for him going forward for the Bills. So, you've got two teams that you're concerned about what's going to happen to them offensively. And you got two defenses that, while they're not great, they're solid defenses. And that matchup is going to be very interesting. Of course, we'll talk about that more later. And of course, Monday night, the Buccaneers came out and they were the Succaneers, and they got trounced by the Cowboys from
Yeah.
start to finish. And I would be confident saying it's the end of Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, probably. But we'll see how that ends up playing out. Money talks, and nothing else really does.
Yeah, man. When I look at kind of the games, like you said, you had a couple games that were a lot closer than we expected them to be, right? And the Dolphins almost pulled off the upset. And I think that it's fair to look at the fact that Josh Allen continues to not play up to the level of what was expected of him early in the season. He continues to turn the ball over, and that could very well end up being Buffalo's undoing. Cincinnati is a team that, again, you mentioned the injuries, and that offensive line is getting worse and worse and worse, and it's affecting them on the offensive side of the ball to almost lose to the Ravens, who have a phenomenal defense, by the way, taking nothing away from their defense, but to almost lose that game to them without Lamar Jackson in there is kind of mind blowing, really. Like you said, if it wasn't for that turnover, that game completely is different. The one that really kind of surprised me was the Bucks and Cowboys, because quite frankly, I didn't expect the Cowboys to show up. I thought the Cowboys were going to do what the Cowboys do. That's the only game I got wrong on my picks this week, because it wasn't that I didn't think that Dallas was a better team. It's not that I didn't think Dallas should win that game. It's just that I didn't think that Dallas was going to show up and actually do it. So kudos to Dallas for actually showing up and doing what they're supposed to do. The Seattle 49ers game, division game. Uh, I think we kind of expected Seattle to come out and do what we had seen them do the previous two games. Kudos to Pete Carroll for coming out and actually doing some different stuff, throwing us off a little bit schematically. But D'Amico Ryans is a really good defensive coordinator. He adjusted to what they were doing. Kyle Shanahan's pretty good too, and he adjusted offensively to what they were doing defensively. And once those adjustments were made, that game turned into a rout. Uh, you know, I want to go ahead and give the Giants some credit, man. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the Giants here soon because they are playing your Philadelphia Eagles this week. We'll be talking about that game. But they went out and beat the Vikings, which we all expected them to do. The Vikings are the worst 13-4 team, probably of all time. But that doesn't diminish what this Giants team has actually accomplished. Because Daniel Jones is the guy that was a bust, or was considered a bust by most of us coming into the season. Some people even question why the Giants even bothered to pick up his fifth-year option and all this other stuff, right? Or decide to keep him on the roster this year, I should say. And what Dable has done with that team, actually gotten those guys to believe, gotten them to actually play well, is kind of amazing. So just give credit where it's due. That is a team that I think early in the season we felt was overachieving, And by the end of the season, they actually looked like a team that maybe even belonged in the playoff run. You are, I think, muted, sir, because I can't hear you.
Agree.
So with that, man, gotta talk about this week's games. So let's start it off with your team, your Philadelphia Eagles, hosting the New York Giants. What are you expecting out of this game?
A difficult battle. That's a divisional game. We're playing them for the third time this season. We're both very familiar with each other and what we both want to do. In our first game, where we were as close to as healthy as I think we were this season, we gave them a pretty good, I would say, shellacking.
Mhm.
In our second matchup, where we were, last week of the season, they were resting guys. We needed the win to secure this number one seed. They gave us a good battle, but we did win.
Yep.
Now, mind you, that was with Hurts coming back from being injured, Lane Johnson not back led, Chauncey Gardner Johnson just getting back from injury. So a lot of different pieces were fluctuating, injured or just returning from injury. So for this week coming, for this game, on Saturday, the only person that won't be playing is our third corner.
Yeah.
Everybody else is going to be, on the field. And some news that I saw earlier. You may remember that I don't know if I talked about it on here or not, but we brought Anthony Harris, who is another safety that we previously had, back on the practice squad. He's going to be active for this game. So we're, basically looking to me like we're going to use Chauncey Gardner Johnson in the role Vontae Maddox would play for the defense. And then we're going to use a combination of Reed Blankenship and Anthony Smith at the safety position that he would normally occupy.
Yep.
So that's something of interest, and at least Harris was there and was willing to come back because I think he does bring a lot as far as a change of pace from Blankenship, who's like a wild, frenetic, all over the field, just tackling beast, but still a rookie, still learning some of the nuances. So
Yep.
there'll be situations where you want to have a veteran guy in, and we'll be able to do that now. As far as the Giants go, they're going to be about as healthy as they've been all year as well. A lot of their defense is going to be back. Very strong defense, very attacking. Pep, excuse me, I got Pep Hamilton on my mind. Their DC, Wink, Martindale, he's going to bring it. Like I said, he's seen us twice. He's figured out what to do, at least in the last game versus what we were putting out there the last game.
Mhm.
But hopefully, one of the things that the Eagles are going to do this week is actually open up the playbook. Because what I've seen the past few weeks, which disgusts me honestly, is just vanilla play. You can't go out and win NFL games if you're just throwing the ball the same plays over and over. You're playing just 5 yards off soft zone defense the whole game, allowing guys to eat you up from man, to eat you up for different things. You can't win football games that way.
Yeah.
And that's why we barely won one and lost, two before that. I think it's been a game of one-upsmanship. We're going to save everything for the playoffs. We almost shot ourselves in the foot doing that. But now the playoffs are here, so all these grandiose plans and all these concocted hopes and stories that Eagles fans have, there's a time to see if it's true or not. If it's
Yeah.
true, then we're going to come out. We're going to air the ball out. We're going to be more like we were at the beginning of the season. We're going to mix in the run a lot. We're going to get Boston Scott involved because Boston Scott is the giant killer. So he needs to be heavily involved in this game. Obviously, Miles Sanders, I don't want to see a lot of running from Hurts, but if the situation presents itself, I want you to run and slide. Yeah, get down like you were doing at the beginning of the season. A lot
Yep.
of people talk about the injury. The thing with the injury is Hurts got injured on a play up the middle on a dive that he does not normally do.
Yeah.
We don't want to see those anymore. That's why you have running backs. He does not need to be making those plays.
Yeah.
Sometimes they work out, but you want to be careful with your quarterback, especially in the playoffs. But on the flip side, we don't want him to go out and feel hampered, feel like he can't play and be the Jalen Hurts that he's been all season, the guy that was in the MVP conversation. Because if we don't have him playing that way, we can still win the game, but it's going to be a lot more difficult. Defensively, like I said, we're going to be as close to 100% as we can be, attacking, going at everyone, trying to force turnovers, trying to shut down the pass. We now have a solid 9 to 10 man rotation On our line. We got the best linebacking core I think we've had in probably 10, 15 years. Because we had a lot of times where we would have just really bad linebackers, right? We'd have great safeties. We'd have, solid cornerbacks. We'd have a great line. And then just like two guys that we just slung out there at linebacker. So we really wouldn't address that position.
Yeah.
And that's paid off for us. So we're pretty complete on defense. I'd say one of the most complete teams overall. Doesn't matter if you're first, second, third, as long as you can get the job done. And I think the Giants are going to do what they've been doing all season in this game. They're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to try to play aggressive defense. They're going to try to get turnovers or three and outs as much as they can. They're just going to go out and play giant football, run the ball a lot, throw when necessary, run with Daniel Jones. So, we got a guy that's going to run against another guy that runs. So it's just going to be, hey, who executes better, who uses the talent that they have the best, and who goes out there hungry and wanting to win.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, man, when you talk about playing a team for the third time, right? It's always kind of interesting to see what might somebody pull out that the other team hasn't seen, right? What tendencies can you break? What things might you be able to do that might catch the other team off guard? And that's what's going to be interesting because, like you said, the Eagles, the last few weeks of the season really kind of like shut things down a little bit, right? They went into, and I think part of it was to protect Gardner Minshew, right? Um, and then when Hurts came back, he wasn't fully healthy yet, or at least to the point that you didn't want to risk him getting injured. You just want to kind of get him out there and get some of the rust off. And so, it's kind of a little bit of a cautious game plan, even with Hurts out there, right? So it will be interesting to see. Will having this week off allow kind of a reset and allow you guys to come out there and play with a lot more intensity, be a little bit more, creative and aggressive, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but the defensive side as well. Because, the Giants, like you said, they're going to come out there, they're going to try to play physical football. They don't have great wide receivers. They're not going to go out there and necessarily shred you through the air. Although Daniel Jones has shown that he can certainly, throw the ball, and they've gotten production out of their wide receivers. But it all starts with that running game. If Saquon is having success, if Daniel Jones is getting out of the pocket and running it well, all of a sudden their offense is a little bit better and they're able to throw the football a little bit. But if you guys can stop that running game and you can keep Daniel Jones from getting outside the pocket and picking up yards with his feet, I think they're going to be in for a long day, personally.
Well, man, you know who I think is going to win. But no game is 100% sure until it's played. So I'm just ready to get the game going, watch the game, make things happen, and then see what happens at the end.
Yeah. And, on the other side of the NFC, obviously we had the 49ers and the Cowboys. One of those teams you're very familiar with is you've played the Cowboys twice this year, obviously. Um, you know, I kind of look at this year versus last year. Cowboys and 49ers met in the wild card round last year, a game which the 49ers won. And honestly, Mike, if you go back and look at that game, Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt in that game, hurt his shoulder, and he didn't play very well after he hurt it. You look at the fact that Bosa got hurt in that game, Warner was limping around in that game, Debo wasn't 100%, but he was still out there trying to give it a go. And even with all that, man, it still took a play where Debo literally was like an inch from getting the first down. They went for the quarterback sneak. They motioned Trent Williams. They didn't let him set for a second, and they got a 5-yard penalty, and they had to punt the ball, and that gave Dallas one last chance, right? So, quick shout out from King Yusuf. So, what's up? Appreciate you tuning in. But when I look at this year's game, what's different to me, right? Well, this 49ers team is still really good at stopping the run, much like they did last year, right? Dallas has been using Tony Pollard a little bit more, which is a little bit different style. But the 49ers clearly are expecting a lot of run in this game. Drake Jackson, who has had a pretty decent rookie season, he hasn't played like Nick Bosa did his rookie year, but he's had a good rookie season. And they've actually got him as a healthy scratch this week because they wanted to bring in more guys to actually bulk up against the run, and he's more of a pure pass rusher. So the 49ers are clearly expecting the run. And let's not forget that Jerry told us to expect triple threat Dak, so we should all be shaking our boots for that. Um, but when I look at Dallas, what I see is a team who is running the ball a little bit better when they decide to run it, but they're prone to just decide that they're going to sit there and throw the ball 40, 50 times, right? I'm also seeing a team that, although CD Lamb has stepped up towards the end of this year, doesn't look as good at the wide receiver position without Amari Cooper. I think that was a big loss for them. Now, on the other side, when I look at the 49ers, what I see is a team that has gotten healthy at the right time. Debo got basically 3 or 4 weeks off. He's 100% right now. Christian McCaffrey was a big acquisition for this team and has really unlocked a lot of things for this 49ers team. And he's healthy. This is actually the first time he hasn't been on the injury report all season. So, fully healthy Christian McCaffrey. Elijah Mitchell, you got back, had a chance to come get some of the rust off last week. So, that's another piece. That's a guy that can actually come in and spell Christian McCaffrey. And then a lot of people won't be necessarily familiar with this name if you don't watch 49ers games. But watch out, end of the game, as Dallas is possibly getting worn down a little bit, Jordan Mason. He's basically a little bowling ball. He'll come in there and he's going to be a hard runner. He's going to be fresh at the end of the game. And that's a guy that I think we could see getting some carries at the end of the game to kind of put this away. The other big thing that I've noticed is, and this actually happened after the Kansas City game while Jimmy Garoppolo was still a quarterback, Kyle Shanahan started getting more aggressive. Kyle Shanahan, I think, got tired of playing it safe. And he was just like, you know what? Screw it. We're just going to be aggressive. And he has not taken his foot off the gas just because Brock Purdy is the quarterback. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, Brock Purdy hasn't played a real defense yet. Played that Redskins defense, shredded them. That same defense held Dallas to 6 points. I know Cowboy fans don't want to talk about that because they want to just talk about what happened against Tampa last week. But we can't just act like 2 weeks ago you didn't get shut down by Washington's defense, right? We can't act like your defense didn't get roasted by Sam Howell. We can't act like that didn't happen, okay? So when I'm looking at Brock Purdy, as long as he continues to play within the offense, as long as he continues to look for the reads that Kyle Shanahan tells him are going to be there, as long as he allows Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and Juice and McCaffrey and Mitchell to carry the workload for him, he's going to be fine. So, I'm looking at this game, man. I feel like any given Sunday, right? Anything can happen. And the Cowboys are a immensely talented team. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Their defensive line is really, really good. Lawrence is, a guy who can wreak havoc. And Micah Parsons has been just insane, right? So by no means am I saying like this is a guaranteed lock that we're going to win this game. But the 49ers, top to bottom, at pretty much every position besides maybe quarterback, I feel like have more talent. And on top of that, they're the more physical team. So the question is going to be, after Dallas gets pounded on all game long, and we know that they struggle with the run, right? And that's what the 49ers love to do. What's this game going to look like? I almost expect it to be similar to the Seattle game, where I think Dallas will stick around for a half, maybe even 3 quarters. And then I see the 49ers just kind of pulling away at the end. But I'm curious from your perspective.
So the thing is, they've also got Leighton Vander Esch back to add to what you were discussing on defense. He makes a big difference for them if he can stay healthy.
He's big for them.
I think their line looks the best it's going to look. It's not the lines they've had in the past, but it's the best it's going to be.
Yeah.
To me, the main thing is what Dak we get. If he comes out and he plays like last week, he gives them a great chance, or better. He gives them a great chance. I mean, think about their wide receivers. You didn't mention CeeDee Lamb, but you also got to remember Michael Gallup is there. Since he's returned and been playing, he's played well for them. He's been another guy, and then that acquisition of T.Y. Hilton has been very important for them. That's a deep threat down the field that can stretch the field for them. So these are some things to think about. And also, they'll use any of their tight ends in the passing game. Yep. So a lot of different weapons they do have offensively. Turnovers are the thing here. Whoever wins the turnover battle has a good chance to win the game. I think the 49ers have more of a, the word I'm looking for here is basically they can endure a couple of turnovers and still possibly win the game. I think the Cowboys are going to have to play another turnover free game to really get themselves a strong chance. I expect the 49ers to win this game, but again, like I said in my own game, the game has to actually be played because Dallas has been a team that should be a division winner. In most years, 13-4 wins your division.
Yep.
Right, 12 wins wins your division in most seasons. It just so happened that the Eagles had a great year and they're in the same division.
Yep.
So this is a really a division winning team. They had to go on the road last week, or a team that should be a division winner that went on the road last week and beat a team that should have even won their own division.
Yep.
My thought was that Dallas was going to do what Dallas has always done, and this is why I picked against them in this choke. But they proved me wrong, and I have
Yep.
to respect the fact that they did prove me wrong with that. But we'll see if they can carry that momentum moving forward, and also if they can outcoach you. Dan Quinn running that defense looks really solid. He's able to maneuver the pieces around the way he wants them to go. Offensively, still some question marks on what they're going to do, what effect Mike McCarthy has on the actual play calling, things of that nature. But I think we have to give Dallas a chance. I don't think we're going to see a blowout unless they turn the ball over a lot. But I think that the 49ers should win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things I look at when it comes to this game, what I feel like is honestly the key to San Francisco winning this game, is if they can stop Dallas's running game and they can get Kellen Moore to fall in love with the pass, and they ask Dak to drop back 40 times in this game, I do not feel that the Cowboys can win this game if Dak throws the ball 40 times.
That seems to be kind of on the other side of the threshold for him. But hey, we'll see. If he's clicking on all cylinders, it might work.
Yeah. I mean, I will just say, you are playing a different defense this week, Dak. That a lot of those passes you were completing against the Bucks are not going to be there this week. So, but we'll see. But switching over to the AFC side, so we have the Bengals and the Bills, a game that we were supposed to get a couple weeks ago, and unfortunately the Devar Hamlin situation occurred, and so this is a game that a lot of people were kind of looking forward to. But I do feel like maybe the performance of these two teams last week has maybe made this game not as desirable for a lot of people. But I do kind of feel like maybe both of those teams just felt like they were going to go steamroll the competition last week and they played like it. I expect both teams to come out and play a much better game this week against each other because they know the competition level is going to be a lot higher.
Well, this is what you call a game of destiny because you got two teams that right should have played like you said a few weeks ago. The game got canceled, and then they meet again. Very interesting about this game is if Cincinnati wins, then the championship game is either going to be in Cincinnati or in Kansas City. If Buffalo wins, it's either going to be in Buffalo or Atlanta,
Yeah.
depending on what happens with the other game. So I think that it's interesting to note that two teams got screwed in this situation. Cincinnati for seeding purposes as well, because they could have actually climbed had they had that win.
Yep.
But what they did was they basically said, "Oh, if Buffalo wins, we'll put it in a neutral site." Right? If it's Buffalo versus Kansas City, that'll be a neutral site game
Yeah.
because we don't want to penalize Buffalo for not being able to finish the game. But I feel like you are penalizing Cincinnati for not being able to finish the game. Just personal thought, whatever. But this is an opportunity for Cincinnati to come out and say, you know what, we know what happened. Sorry to hear about that. It sucks.
Yeah.
We were part of it too. I'm sure it affected the players a lot as well. Definitely know it did, and the coach. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, now we're back to football.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's goal is to go out here and outscore Buffalo and take them out. Buffalo's goal is to go out here and pound that ball on Cincinnati, use Josh Allen's legs, his arm, use their plethora of running backs, use their wide receiver core, their defense, whatever they need to do to win this game.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, solid defense as well. But like I said, the concern with Cincinnati is their offensive line. Buffalo's offensive line is not great, but it's at least middle of the pack. Cincinnati's, the more injuries they happen, the lower I feel like in my eyes that defense drops. So
Yep.
are they going to be? I mean, offensive line, excuse me, drops. Are they going to be able to do enough to actually protect Joe Burrow long enough for him to make the plays, for him to look like Joe Cool back there? That's the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair question, right? Because at the end of the day, when you look at these two teams, there's a lot of talent up for both of these teams, right? And these two offenses can really kind of get after it. But the question ultimately becomes, can Cincinnati's offensive line hold up well enough for Joe Burrow to be able to get the ball out? Can they actually get those deep shots? Because I feel like, the Bills are going to be able to get those, right? And then the other question is, which Josh Allen? We talked about Dak Prescott, but which Josh Allen is going to show up this week? Because let's be legit, man. Like, Josh Allen hasn't looked that great lately, right? He's had a lot of turnovers, a lot of like just missed throws. Not very Josh Allen like. So I don't know if he's dealing with some undisclosed injuries, or what might be going on there. But he definitely has not looked as good as he looked at the beginning of this year, here in the last few weeks.
Remember, he had the injury to his, what was it, his elbow, I think. I don't
Yeah.
think it's ever fully recovered. He's able to play through it, but he definitely doesn't seem to be able to put the same snap or
Yep.
velocity on the ball. So I'd say that that's a big issue as to what's going on with him.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go Buffalo in this game just because I think at the end of the day, Cincinnati's offensive line woes are gonna be too much to overcome.
Yeah, I'm going Buffalo as well.
And then we have the Kansas City Chiefs, who are coming off of the first round bye, going to be hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, you know, on paper, I think most of us would say this is probably going to be a blowout, right? Very much like what we saw with or what we expected in the wild card round. Uh, just for reference, the first game between these two, in week 10, Patrick Mahomes, 331 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he lit them up pretty well. When I look at this game, though, what I see in Kansas City is a team that's been playing well, but they get themselves in holes, right? They've been kind of one of those teams that, like, the what we call the light switchers, right? They want to go and, you know kind of play around, let people hang in games, and then they'll like, oh, we'll flip the switch when we need to. That's what I've seen out of Kansas City this year, and it's been them a couple times. But for the most part, when you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you can overcome it. This is a Jacksonville team that is learning to win, and they're learning to win some of these games. You saw no panic in them last week, and for Trevor Lawrence to go out and have the first half that he had, and to mentally check back into that game and not, lose it, and actually come back and win that game. This game could be closer than people expect. Jacksonville actually has a pretty good defense. Uh, I still think they overpay for Christian Kirk. But when you look at what they went out and added at wide receiver and a tight end, they put some weapons around their quarterback this year. And then, of course, Travis Etienne, we all know that he's good. So to me, I think this game could be a little bit closer. I do think experience and coaching ultimately is going to come down to deciding this game. And Doug Peterson, uh, obviously, has done a great job this year. I think he should be in the conversation for Coach of the Year. But he is going against Andy Reid, who knows him pretty well. So I'm going to give the edge to Andy Reid on the coaching side a little bit here. I'm going to give the edge to Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to go with Kansas City.
So, very interesting storyline behind this game. The mentor and the pupil meeting again. We talk about how much Doug Peterson is known by Andy Reid, but you also have to realize Andy Reid is known by Doug Peterson, right? So they know each other. They're familiar. Peterson is from the Reid coaching tree. So, there's always the extra motivation to try to beat your mentor. I honestly love Marvin Jones, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram as a little receiver, wide tight end group.
Yeah.
Definitely the running back, ETN, is a guy that can, he's just a thoroughbred. He's a horse. Defensively, I think that they're a lot better than they get credit for. I think they have a very good opportunity to stick in this game, but here's the problem: you can't turn the ball over, and you are going to have to score more than Kansas City. So the trick is you're going to have to go to Kansas City. The trick is, can you go out when they score seven, you score seven. When they score three, you score seven. Because inevitably, there's going to be a time where they're going to score and you don't. But all of the times, your goal should be getting touchdowns, or if they don't score, at least getting a field goal. So every time they score seven, you have to score seven. Every time they don't score, you need to score seven, but you have to score at least three. And you can't turn the ball over. Those are the key components for Jacksonville. On the other side for Kansas City, play Kansas City Chiefs football. If you come out and impose your will on the team, allow them to start playing the way that they don't need to play, you're going to win the game. If you come out and get up on them 14-0, it's going to be difficult, not impossible, but difficult for them to come back. You go out, you do what you need to do from the jump. That way you don't have to be concerned with what else is happening. You do that, Kansas City should win this game, and I believe that that's what's going to happen. There's going to be a time where Jacksonville is not going to make a play, either go for it on fourth, miss a field goal, or get a turnover. And I think you do that one time against this Kansas City team and you don't have weapons to match them, you're in a lot of trouble, and it's going to be hard to get out of that hole.
Yeah, man. One interesting thing with Kansas City is they are a team that just puts a ton of pressure on you, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
as the opposing offense, you feel pressure to go out and score every single time because you know that no matter how good your defense is, you know that Kansas City can go out there and put up points on every single possession. And so you always have that concern. And even if you get a lead on them, you know no lead is safe. Now, one good thing for Jacksonville is Doug Peterson doesn't have to try to convince them if they get a lead this week that no lead is safe, right? They know. So they at least got that going for them. But I just think Kansas City's going to be too much.
Yeah, definitely. I think I see Jacksonville as a team on the rise. They're a little bit ahead of schedule, but there's nothing wrong with being ahead of schedule. Problem is if you're behind schedule.
Yeah. So real quick, man, kind of getting into keeping this NFL theme. Talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on around the league. So for those who haven't been keeping track, we have had Matt Rule got fired earlier in the season. Frank Reich also got fired from Indianapolis early this season, as did Nathaniel Hackett. Lovey Smith and Cliff Kingsbury are the only two coaches that got fired after the season, or at least head coaches who got fired. We did have a few assistants, and what I'm looking at might not be completely updated, but I do know the Chargers actually fired their offensive coordinator and their quarterback coach. I think I said defensive coordinator earlier, but it was offensive. The Falcons defensive coordinator, Dan Pease, has not been fired, but he did retire. So there will be an opening for a defensive coordinator position in Atlanta as well. The Browns have fired their defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, which, I mean, can't really be too shocked by that. But I think that Kevin Stefanski, he's got to be on the hot seat next year. If this team underperforms again, I don't see how they keep him. And then also the Titans have fired four assistant coaches, including their offensive coordinator, Todd Downing. So a lot of shakeups. I mean, what are your thoughts here? Especially, I think with the Titans and the Chargers, and really the Raiders to me are the three teams that I'm kind of surprised didn't fire their coaches.
Well, I will say this. A lot of times, people who look like me get a year, maybe two,
Mhm.
and they get fired if they don't produce results. People who look like you get a lot longer before um, they're snatched back if they don't perform as well. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. You've even saw that on the coordinator route because I think a guy that definitely should not have got fired and Byron Leftwich got fired.
Yeah,
But
Brian Leftwich. That was not on my list, but yes, good catch.
but what I will say with that one is with Leftwich, you don't know what you've done. Tampa Bay. You're not going to replace him with somebody as good as him. So you downgraded that. Todd Bowles is a African American head coach, a minority head coach. Another bad year from him, he'll probably be gone. But here's the problem with that: another bum situation because more than likely Tom Brady's leaving. So Tom Brady's leaving. Who's going to be your quarterback, right? So
Yep.
it's a tough situation.
Yep.
The Raiders, not surprised. They always make bad choices when it comes to coaching and even player personnel. So not surprised that they're making a bad decision here. This is more the status quo for them. I mean, Titans and everybody else, you can really honestly say it's going to depend on who's available, who's interested in the jobs, and who they can bring in from staffs. Because I think that's the most important part. Is not just always recycling the same candidates, but looking at guys that may be like, position coaches that may be elevatable to a position, or a guy that's just like you know, a scout or something, or a trainer that may be on that path that you may can, make a QB coach or whatever, depending on who you've let go. It's always the pipeline. It's always knowing where your pipeline is at, who's in it, and who that you can actually get to come in that's going to fit what you want to do. I think that's the important part for all the head coaching and OC, DC, assistant coach firings that have happened and replacing those guys. And it's got to be somebody, of course, that fits the philosophy that that team wants to have. You don't want to bring in a guy to be offensive coordinator in Tennessee that wants to throw the ball a lot, right? You have Key Henry. So
Yep.
he's got to be somebody that's on that ground and pound philosophy.
Yep. So a couple other coaches. The article I was looking at was not completely updated. So a couple other ones that I see too is the Vikings did fire their defensive coordinator, Donatello. I mean, I can't really blame them for that one. That defense was absolutely horrid this season. And the New York Jets also fired their offensive coordinator. A little bit of a surprising move, honestly, because this was a guy that you actually coached, Robert Saleh, that is, actually coached with in San Francisco. He already knew what he was going to bring to the table. So you either brought a guy like that with you because you felt like the long term vision was going to be there, or you didn't. Like, so to me, it's a little surprising that he's already gotten rid of him. But it is what it is. I mean, the quarterback didn't develop this year. The offense didn't look great all the time. So I'm not, completely faulting the move. I just thought it was a little surprising because I thought the Jets knew a little bit more about where they were right now. Yes. But I agree with you about the Brian Leftwich thing. To me, that's the dumbest firing that I've seen so far. You're basically putting your entire offensive line being decimated and Tom Brady being old at Brian Leftwich's feet. And somebody out there is going to go hire Brian Leftwich and he's going to go have success somewhere else. And you may have just done him a huge favor because now he's going to get to go somewhere else and actually be successful versus coming back and coaching this team that's going to have all these injuries and not even have a quarterback next year. So they may have actually did him a favor. I mean,
Oh
still
yeah,
messed up, but
and don't forget about your favorite coordinator getting let go, Greg Roman.
Oh yes, yes, yes. How did I forget that? Just brings smiles to my face. I don't usually celebrate people getting fired, man, but Greg Roman, I still blame for us not already having our sixth Lombardi trophy. All you had to do was hand the ball to Frank Gore, man. That's all you had to do. I've been saying for the last couple years how the Ravens offense was being held back by Greg Roman, how he was not allowing Lamar Jackson to go out there and do the things that we saw Lamar Jackson do in college, right? Like I hear all these people, oh, Lamar can't read a defense. He can't do this. He can't make this throw. I'm like, what are you talking about? I watched him do all that stuff in college, right? You're telling me that he can't do this stuff in the NFL? I don't buy it. Lamar, I think, is going to be even better than what we've ever seen him next year, assuming they go and make a good hire. Maybe they bring out Brian Leftwich.
I think for Lamar, obviously you got to get him paid, or or trade him or franchise him or some
Yep.
combination. Um, I'm going to shift on Lamar. There's something else I want to talk about in regards to Lamar.
Yep.
So there's a lot made about him not playing. He got on Twitter. He said that he was not stable. He wasn't stabilized, and he wasn't going to be playing. Harbaugh kind of came out and he didn't say it, but he insinuated very strongly that he believed that Lamar Jackson could play. Then the speculation went to, the contract situation was the reason why. So I'll say this. Of course, the contract had a part to do with it, but it was not necessarily a negative against the organization or the team. It was just, hey, I'm not 100% healthy. I saw a guy, RG3, go out here years ago for his brothers and put it all on the line, get hurt, and never recover. I'm not going to allow myself to be in the same position. If I'm not 100%, I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
I don't blame that. I don't blame him for that. All the people who say, "Oh, Lamar should have played. He could have played. He just didn't want to play," and if he was really hurt, blah 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 blah. I challenge any of you to show me your sports medicine degree and the fact that you reviewed his recent X-rays and MRIs, and you can see the structural damage, how it's recovering, all those things. If you don't have those things, why are you really saying why this man is not playing?
Yeah.
That's a problem. You have to understand that this is a man's livelihood. I know you had Vic go out there and say, "Oh, he should have went out there and played." Well, Vic, your career was cut short because you went out there and played times when you shouldn't have. So to pass that advice on to someone else, I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah.
Former Eagles quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, man, I I'm gonna just say that the problem here is right. This is that old school mentality, right? This like suck it up, go out there, play through everything, kind of thought process, right? And Lamar Jackson has to think about Lamar Jackson here. He has to think about his long term future and his health, you know. And if Lamar Jackson is truly healthy enough to go out there and play, and he just chose not to play because he didn't get the contract he wanted, I would be very unhappy with him. But to just make the assumption that he is healthy enough to play, to say that he doesn't want to be out there, to suggest that a guy who actually did show up and play this year would suddenly not show up for a playoff game, to me is very insulting. It's insulting to Lamar. It's insulting to his character. And I get where people feel like it's a logical conclusion to jump to, but let's not go there.
You mean playoffs? Playoffs?
Playoffs. Talking
Playoffs?
about, we talking about playoffs. So
No,
speaking
so
of oh, go ahead.
yeah. Also, man, we lauded and applauded Tua for getting out there, playing her great job, Tua. And where's he at now? Another concussion sitting on the side. These are things Lamar Jackson looked at. I'll be honest with you. If Lamar was good enough to play, but he wasn't 100%, I don't blame him for not stepping out there. Because he gets hurt, he loses millions and putting millions of dollars in contract.
Yeah.
The Ravens would then come back and be like, "Oh, well, you're injury prone. You were injured at the end of the season. You're injured this off season. We don't know if you're ever going to be the same guy." Blah blah blah. That's what would happen. So you have to look out for your own personal interests at times as well. And I think that's what Lamar Jackson has done. And seeing how things worked out with Tua when he didn't do it, I'm not upset at Lamar at all for for making the move he made.
Yeah, so I was actually gonna bring a Tua up because as of about a couple hours ago, I just happened to just now see this when I was pulling up the list for the coaches. But Tua actually tweeted out a picture. And on one side, it's like him with his teammates. On the other side, it's just him, and it's kind of like whited out kind of look. And it says, "When one chapter ends, another begins. Proud of this last one, excited for the next one." And so, of course, people are like reading into this and wondering, is this to his way of saying that he's about to hang it up?
Well, um, if I recall, let me see where his contract is at. Wanted to think if this was his third or fourth year, because if this was his fourth year, they probably didn't pick up his option after he got hurt. So no, he came in. So this would have been his. I think this would have been his fourth year.
So 2023, his cap hits like 9.6 million.
All right, what's his actual contract? What was the first year of his contract?
2020, I believe.
Okay, so this was his third year. So the next year would be his fourth year. Um, if I'm Tua, I'm gonna take the time to get my brain right, understanding that the Miami Dolphins are gonna probably move on.
Yeah.
I would take the year off, work, get myself right, pass on my baseline test, get my brain together, get everything good, and then try to make a comeback after that. Obviously, it's going to probably be with another team. So I think that's what we're looking at. Could he retire? Yeah, he could. I mean, Andrew Luck did. He could. It's a possibility. I mean, he's made a nice chunk of change so far. He's completed 3 years. That's the 2020-2021 season, the 2021, 2022, and the 2022, 2023.
Yeah.
So he's been in the league, excuse me, for enough time to get his pension. He's made a good amount of money as a quarterback on his rookie deal, so we'll see. Um, I, for one, honestly hope he doesn't have to retire. I hope that maybe taking a year off, getting everything good to go, can put you in a position where you can come back and play.
Yeah.
But if not, then I applaud you for making the best decision for your long term health.
Hmm.
You know, so that's kind of where I stand on it.
Yeah.
Um, Mike McDaniel and the training staff at that facility should be ashamed of themselves. The quote unquote independent doctor just on the sidelines is supposed to check for concussions and stuff should be ashamed of himself. It's not the first time I said this. I said when he got hurt the first time, when he was throwing up gang signs on the ground, do not let that man play another snap this year. He went back out there, he got hurt again. It almost felt inevitable, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, man, people like forget, but like he took what, 3, 4 weeks off in between that injury and coming back. So, it's not like he just took like a week off. Like he took almost like a month off. And, still within a couple of games went out there and got re injured. It's like he clearly needs more time. Right. And, I don't know if you actually remember or not. There was a guy a couple years ago that actually played for the 49ers, linebacker. Came out rookie season, had this great season, and this was like right after the whole, Omen and Willis combo, and people were comparing him to those guys and talking about how great he was as a rookie. And he literally came out and was like, you know what, I'm gonna retire because he started like thinking about like the hits, and he probably got a concussion or two that season, and he decided, you know what, it's not worth it. And I remember a lot of people were very critical of him and calling him soft and weak and some other non-family friendly names that I'm not going to say here on air. But that's the thing is, man, these guys have to be able to do what they need to do. You know what I'm saying? It's not about your entertainment. There's always going to be another guy that will come along and entertain the fans. We have to stop thinking that as fans that we're entitled to seeing these guys play football. Their families are entitled to having them around and healthy. They're entitled to be able to live a life that doesn't leave them crippled. 'Cause I don't care how many millions of dollars you have. If your brain is jacked up and your body's jacked up, what good is that money?
Yeah.
So I'll just leave it at that. I know you wanted to talk real quick about the about something with Dion.
Well, we got another one recruit again. It's the cornerback again. It's important because he's going to have one of the best college cornerback duos. He got his guy from last year following him to Colorado, and he's able to bring in top cornerback in the class again. These are great coups for Dion. This shows that it's not where he's at, but it shows that the kids are wanting to play for Dion, right? This is obviously a step up. I think we're going to see some great recruiting classes from him because he's charismatic. He's a people person. He understands the game. He's broken it down on ESPN, NFL Network. So he's been around the game for a long time. So I think that this is just something for people to look at and say, hey, Dion's going to make some noise. And I will say this, as long as Dion is at Colorado, I'll be keeping an eye on Colorado because I want to see what he does. He makes me interested in Colorado. If he wasn't there, I would care less what's happening in Colorado. I'm just going to be honest about that. So I think it's a great coup for him. It shows that he's able to recruit. This is only the beginning. I guarantee there's going to be more. And I'm sure he's got his eyes set a lot of guys. And keep in mind, the guy he flipped from the Miami Hurricanes. But you know what? So be it. It is what it is. You're not as charismatic. You didn't give him the same thing you got for Dion, so he went where he needed to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my thing with the whole thing is, and I'm a huge Dion fan. Dion obviously went to Florida State. He's a 49er, player. We won a Super Bowl with him there. So I'm a huge Dion fan. Even after he went to play for the Cowboys, I didn't disown him, which I think says a lot for how big of a Dion fan I am. But I want to see him do a little bit more than just get corners, right? I mean, okay, cool. I mean, if I'm a corner and Dion wants me to come play for him, I want to go there. You know what I'm saying? For sure, right? So I want to see, can Dion bring in a top level quarterback to Colorado, right? Can he start getting some top tier defensive guys outside a corner to actually come, right? And I'm not saying that he can or can't. I'm just saying I want to see him, expand up outside of just getting these top tier corners. I think this is a great start for him. And hey, if this is the easy fruit for you to pick it, right? I mean, I'm not gonna sit there and criticize you for going for the low hanging fruit and getting the guys that should be easier for you to get, because at the end of the day, at some point, people aren't going to look at like, oh, the first two really high recruits you got were both corners. They're just gonna say, oh, you got a top guy this year. You got, I think, this corner that he just got now is like the eighth overall player in the draft, or not the draft, but in the rankings this year. He was the number one corner. So at some point, people are just going to look at that and they're going to say, talent is going there. I want to go there, right? And that's kind of what the long term vision is. I just want to see it happen before people start putting the crown on, so to speak.
Well, just to give you a idea of what he's got here, he's got Dylan Edwards, a 5'8" running back, 4-star national composite, uh, nationally 183, 12th in his position. That he's the sign is coming to Colorado. He's got a Marion Miller, a wide receiver, 6'2", 4-star, 33rd in his position, 246 nationally. And he's got Adam Hopkins from Thomas County Central in Thomasville, Georgia, 6 foot, 35th at his position, a wide receiver, 257th nationally. That have already, you know, signed letters of intent. The class is 18, and of course it'll be 19 now. He ranks fourth in transfers, so he's got guys that are coming in to transfer into the program. Right, he's got 23 commits. One of them is a 5-star. Three of them are 4 stars. 9 of them are 3 stars. Right, so this is a guy that he's bringing talent there. Not just at cornerback. He's bringing other talent there. He's using the transfer portal. He's using the other things that are important to bring other talent there. There's all this talent going to be 5-star? Of course not, because you have to get the program built up. The class ranks 19th overall right now, from what I'm looking at. So he's doing what needs to be done, and it's going to take a year or two. He's not going to get quarterbacks the next couple of years because Shador's there, right? So you're not going to get a guy that's going to come in until it's like Shador's last year. Then you might get a guy that'll come in to be his backup for 1 year and then take over. But right now, you're not going to get a high quality starting quarterback that's going to come into your program. It's just not going to happen just because of what you already have. He's addressing, it looks like, positions of need in Colorado. That's what you're supposed to do when you come in, and you're supposed to make the team better. And like I said, so far, that's what Deion's doing. I like it, and I'll definitely be following Colorado because he's there.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I like Dion, but I don't care about Colorado. Even with Dion there, I don't care about Colorado. I wish him success, and I hope that he does bring in more talent than what he has brought in. And all I'm saying is, you know, sometimes we get caught up in these stories, and we kind of got in this what's happened lately kind of mentality, right, with a lot of stuff, and that's where I want to kind of just say like, hey, until he starts bringing in guys at defensive end that are top five of their position, or until he starts bringing the wide receivers that are top five of their position. Let's slow down just a little bit, and acknowledge that he's doing a great job. Uh, and part of this, honestly, is because I don't want to see people set the expectations too high for Colorado here. Because if you listen to a lot of these people talk, man, they have you believing that Colorado gonna make the playoffs this year. And I think that it's gonna take Dion a couple years to get this program right, but I think he will eventually get it right. But I just think that we need to slow down a little bit on the hype train right now. That's all.
And another thing I wanted to touch on is in regards to the Florida Gators. So Jaden Rashada, 5-star QB commit, was was asked for and granted his release from Florida after his guaranteed $13 million NIL deal did not go through.
Oh,
So
Florida.
Florida essentially attempted to buy a quarterback, and then they didn't pay him, so he left.
Hold up. Let me just get this reference real quick. Um, Anybody who's under the age of 35 might not get this. So this was strictly for our older crowd. They wrote the check, but it bounced.
Mhm.
That's what happened.
Um, to me, this is the future of the NIL. You're gonna have guys commit to programs. If the money isn't there, they're gonna leave because the only reason they're really coming is the money,
Mhm.
which is a byproduct of this system.
Yeah.
I did say that there would be goods and bads from having NIL before it even started, and this is a little bit on the bad side. This is you tried to buy a kid, then you didn't come through on what you tried to buy him for. So he said, "No, I'm not going there unless I'm getting paid this 13 million. I'm not going there."
Yeah.
So it's interesting to know that that's what's going on now at schools.
Yeah.
And if one school's doing it, we know more than one school's doing it. We've had reports that other guys have been offered uh, upwards of 5 million to leave and go to another school. And we know that in the NCAA you could transfer now one time with
Yeah.
no penalty. So it's very interesting to see how many more of these cases happen over the next couple of years. My expectations is going to grow, maybe not exponentially, but at least it's going to grow because every year more and more people are attempting to lure kids to schools with this NIL contracts, and you have to follow through. These things should already be in place, signed, sealed, and ready when you make these presentations to these kids with this money. But I think good for him for saying I really don't want to be at Florida, but for 13 million I'll go. But if I'm not going to get what I was promised,
Yeah.
I'm going to reopen my recruitment and look at what's the best option for me.
Yeah. And my thing with that, man, is honestly what's different now, and this is actually what's good about NIL, right? People are going to complain about it, but this to me is actually what's good about NIL. Because here's what would have happened back in the day. Back in the day, it would have been, hey, come here, we give you this, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, right? I mean, it was all under the table, right? So when somebody didn't give you what they promised, what are you gonna do? You gonna go on national television and tell everyone that you came to school there because they promised you a car because they said they would buy your mama a house and then they ain't do it? No, you can't do that, right? Because now you have to be able to prove that they promised you that. Of course, they're going to deny it, right? So And even if you do prove it, it's not like you're gonna end up getting a house for your mama. You're not getting a car, right? You're done because the NCAA is not gonna let you play anymore. With NIL, these kids now actually have things in writing. They actually have contracts that actually say, you know, this is what you're going to get. And so when they don't get what they're promised, being that these things are now legalized, they can come out and actually say, like, hey, I didn't get what I was promised. And there's no punishment for them. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of teams doing this for the simple fact that teams will understand, hey, we don't want this public humiliation of this. Because guess what happens when Florida goes to the next person and says, hey, we'll give you this? They're going to be like, nah, bro, you got to give me that before I sign. I see what y'all did.
Yeah, I would have got mine before I signed anyway, but
Yeah.
that's that's just me.
But hey,
But
man,
yeah, I wanted to talk about those because I thought they were important. Little tidbits of things that are happening in the world of sports.
but may I just say, could not have happened to a better school than Florida.
I won't disagree.
Yep. Just want to throw that out there. So yeah, man. But that is our time for the evening. So appreciate everybody who tuned in with us. Again, if you're listening to this on the podcast and you want to join us actually live, you can do that on our YouTube channel Friday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find that at playcolorsportstalk.com/live. So come hang out with us on Friday nights and let's do this interactive sports talk thing.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna throw it to my co-host for final thoughts.
Fly Eagles fly. Super Bowl bound, baby.
Yeah, and my team's got a little something to say about it, sir. Hopefully, we'll see you next week.
You can say whatever you want to say. Games ain't played with talking.
Hey, like I said, I hope the 49ers and Eagles are playing next week. That's what I'm hoping for. Let's do it.
I only really care about one, but gotta play somebody for whoever. Let's go.
See y'all next week.